If you want to make a product or a service that's going to be great, it's going to conquer the world, you have to ask this question. I call it the first question. If you remember nothing else from today's presentation, I want you to take this question away. If you're asking this and your competitors are not, you have a massive advantage. The question is this: what are my customers' problems or frustrations? This is the compass that will lead you to a highly valued product or service. So this is how it might work. Fire. Some say that fire was our greatest invention. But why? Fire occurs naturally and it's not difficult to make. It's not that fire itself is brilliant. It is that it solves problems and frustrations. It gives us heat, light, and a means to cook. And things haven't changed. Today we bring fire into our homes in the form of gas and electricity for exactly the same reasons. Heat, light, and a means to cook. And to be fair, we also have a few electrical items that we quite like. So how does this apply to your business? Well, imagine a coffee shop owner. They look across their coffee shop and they ask the question, what are my customers' problems or frustrations? And what they notice is a lot of people that come to the coffee shop are on their own, usually with a book reading. Their biggest problem or frustration is it's really hard to meet people in the local area. So with that information, the business owner can create a service. On a Wednesday afternoon and evening, when they're usually pretty empty, they set up a book group. People come along, read the book, and the cafe owner sells their coffee and cakes. Now they're packed on a Wednesday and they have super loyal customers. Simply because they ask the question, what are my customers' problems and frustrations? A gardener does the same. And he arrives at this answer. My customers' problems and frustrations are when I go on holiday for a couple of weeks, their grass grows. They either have to cut it themselves or they have to find another person. That really is frustrating. So what he does is he finds another local gardener. And that gardener has the same problem. So they agree, share work. When one goes on holiday, the other covers. Now they both have more work and much happier customers. Two competitive businesses working together because they ask the question, what are my customers' problems or frustrations? This picture, this diagram, shows how we conceive of business at its most basic. Our customers have a problem and we have a solution, and we pair them up. And for most of us, that's as far as we go with our business thinking. The problem is this, and any of you who've designed a new product or service or tried a new initiative will have found out, very often you can bring something that solves a problem into the marketplace, and you discover no one buys it. And I'd like to do a bit of audience participation. So I'm going to throw a question to you at various stages, and the answer is always the same. The answer is no one buys it. See, the thing is, we have problems. You and me and everyone on the planet has problems. We know this. But we don't run out and buy things just because we've got a problem. Most of the time, we just live with it. We just think, well, yeah, it's not great, but I'll live with it. We occupy in that space. But when we do choose to buy a product or a service, we go through a very, very specific process. A library will give you business books, hundreds of them, that will explain all the different models and motivations of why someone buys stuff. There are probably as many models as there are books, but it really comes down to one word. That's right. One word. This word is the reason we buy things. And if you know what this word is, you're pretty much halfway there. I'm going to try and prove to you that my theory is correct. I'm going to do it by asking you a question, and the answer is no one buys it. I want you to think about a time when you had to choose between two brands of product or service. So it could be product A or product B or service A or service B, and you chose A over B. So it could be you had a choice of 2 holidays, 2 houses, 2 cars, 2 window cleaners, anything, 2 sandwiches. But you chose A. And I want you for a moment now to consider, what was it that made you choose A over B? And I'm going to suggest to you 3 reasons. Just 3 that will cover every reason that you chose A over B. So the first, which will apply to not many of you, is cost. So you will have potentially bought A over B because it was less costly. Now, that doesn't mean that it was the cheapest. Cost is time, money, and effort. Sure, it might have been the cheapest, but you buy things often to save money in the long term. For example, a low-energy bulb costs you more, but it will save electricity. Anything that can save you time in our busy world can reduce your costs. And anything that takes some of the effort and stress out of your life, all of these can be said to have reduced cost. Just interested in the audience, how many of you made your decision to buy A over B purely based on cost, time, money, and effort? There's a couple of you there are doing that. Yeah, that's quite common. Not our main motivator. And it's interesting that. Everyone thinks it's about price, but it really isn't. The second reason, slightly more important, benefit. You can objectively and logically and rationally point to A and say it is superior in some way. It solves the problem that you were looking to resolve in a better, more fuller way. Benefit is always rational, observable, measurable, pointable, tangible. For those of you who chose A over B, how many of you did so because it was superior? There was a benefit to A over B. So, yeah, okay, a few more of you, Okay, so we still haven't really hit the crux of why you buy things. A few of you did it on cost, a few more on benefit. The third reason is the reason we buy most things, and that is called style. Style doesn't mean fashion, or it can do. But what style means is that you loved the taste, the look, the feel, the smell of the product. It engaged you on a sensory level. Or it could be you liked it on an emotional level. It made you feel good. This is the one you liked. There was nice emotional feelings as you bought it. It might simply be that the customer service is great, and that's why you made the choice. That final reason, style, the sensory, the emotional, the customer experience. How many of you made your choice based on that? And we can see a few. And to be fair, a lot of you will combine the 3. But clearly from you as a group, yeah, style was the one that was winning out there. And it always is. You see, this triangle has a very specific name. Cost, benefit, style. It's called the triangle of value. It's the reason that we buy things, the reason we see things as being valuable. You will ask, what are your problems or frustrations your customers face? But your solution must tick at least one of these boxes. It must be less costly than what's already available, save time, money, and effort. It must be superior, it must be more beneficial, or delivered in a style that engages your customers. So you do this. You find a problem, you bring a solution which is much less costly, much more beneficial, much more stylish, and what happens?
No one buys it.
Yeah. No one buys it. So how can that be possible? We've got a problem. We are better. Well, we know that what I've just shown you can't be true. And the reason it can't be true is if we were buying things based on cost, benefit, and style, our world would be getting less costly, more beneficial, more stylish. It's not. You go to the average supermarket and look what's on the shelf, and it's rubbish. Most products are pretty poor. So what's going on? Well, this triangle, the triangle of value, it's where we as entrepreneurs and inventors spend most of our time. And this is what we're told will make a great product or service. But there's a second triangle. This is not the triangle of value. This is a triangle that no one talks about, ever. And it's the first time you will ever hear of it. It's called the triangle of doom. Now, I should at this point say I like people. I'm known as a people person, and many of my friends are people. But we as people make rubbish customers. We're awful. In fact, if you can sell your products or services to anyone who isn't a person, do it. Because there's this thing about human beings. We're ignorant, we're lazy, and we're biased. Yeah, hold that thought. Let me do some explanation here. So when I say we're ignorant, what I don't mean is that people are stupid. Some are. But no, generally we're not. Generally we're quite creative, we're inventive, we're not stupid. But what I mean by ignorance is that when we go out into the world, we leave our house for the first time, we have no knowledge of the world other than that we're told and that we can see. We learn. A nest-building bird will see a twig, and it will know instinctively what that product is, why it should acquire it, and how it can be used. It's innate knowledge. It doesn't have to see an advert in What Twig magazine with a sexy peacock to decide, yeah, I'm going to go out today and get some twigs. But we as human beings, this is us. We're not born with any knowledge. Every brand, product or service that you use, there was a moment when you didn't know about it. And until you saw it, someone explained it to you, or you used it, you were completely ignorant. There was a time, which you may not remember that well, where you knew none of these. And now you're in knowledge. This is how it works. Imagine you went into a shop and you were looking for something to charge your mobile phone with. And there was a plain cardboard box like this. And on the front of the box was written the words, Universal Phone Charger, $4.99. Well, you could probably assume what was going to be in there, something that might look a bit like this. And you could decide, shall I buy it? You're not ignorant. You understand this product, someone's shown it, you told it, you've used it. But next to this box on the shelf is another box, totally plain, except for these words, Solar Biscuit, $4.99. Will you consider buying it? No, clearly not. Because you don't even know what a solar biscuit is. In fact, until you saw that box, you didn't even know that solar biscuits were a thing. You're not buying it because you don't know what the product is. A solar biscuit is a solar charging platform for a mobile phone. You place it on your windowsill, and in the daytime, it charges up. Nighttime before you go to bed, you pop your phone on it, phone charges up, and the cycle continues. It's sustainable and cheap and reliable. And it's called a solar biscuit because its inventors thought it might look a bit like one of these. Now, I have to add a health warning here at this point. The solar biscuit doesn't exist. I made it up because I needed a product that none of you had heard of before. I got an email from one of my audience members saying, I'm looking for the solar biscuit, where is it, Pete? So please, don't look for it. As far as I know, it doesn't exist. If you do want to make it, feel free. It's not trademarked. But now you can make that decision. You've moved in the last few seconds from ignorance to knowledge. You can now make the choice. Your challenge as a new business is not to create a product that's better, less costly, more stylish than what's already out there, a problem that's solved by whatever you can bring. Your challenge will be this: inform. Because no matter how good your product or service is, no one's going to buy it because they've never heard of it. If you think of a product or service that you love, that you use, very often that won't be the best product that could possibly be made, the best service that could be delivered. But the brands that conquer the world are those that can most effectively inform the world that they exist. So what are the second point in our triangle? Well, yeah, lazy. Now, what I don't mean here is that human beings are like Homer Simpson. We lounge on sofas doing nothing. I do that sometimes. Okay, but sometimes I work. What I mean by this is that we have busy lives. And very often, we keep going back to the same products and services because they're easy. We just know where they are. We can just get to them. Yeah, I'll manage with what I've got. Case in point, the mobile phone. Some say it wasn't fire that was our greatest invention. It was the mobile phone. Who'd be without theirs? But just a couple of generations ago, we didn't bother with mobile phones. They existed, but we're not going to buy into them. The reason for this is that back in the 1980s, this is what a mobile phone looked like. That's the first commercially available mobile phone that came into the UK market. It lasted for about an hour, and it had a suitcase battery. Yeah, the mobile phone is a wonderful device. There's no way we're carrying that around with us. The success of the phone was in its battery. Radio communication, that was sorted way back. But the battery got smaller and smaller until we hit the point where we can carry a phone on a couple of fingers. Our laziness meant that we would just wait until we got home before we used the phone. I want you to imagine what your television set looks like, your TV, because TV went through the same process. I'm guessing your TV doesn't look much like this. This is an early form of TV, very small screen, black and white, and you literally have to tune it in using a dial. TV catered for our laziness. The screens got bigger so we could sit further back. They gave us colour, we love the style of that. And they gave us the remote control, fantastic, at a press of a button, we have our TV. But I'm guessing your TV doesn't look like that either. Your TV looks like this. A flat screen television, probably high definition. And we're quite happy with them. At each stage, our experience of using a TV got easier for us, and we loved it. But we missed a stage out. About 20 years ago, a new TV came onto the market, but we didn't buy into it. It was 3D television. Now, I can remember the very first time I walked into a shop and I saw it on display, and I thought, wow, that is better than what my current TV. I would love it. But I didn't buy it. And I can remember exactly why. Okay, so the price was a bit high, but that's true of new products generally. The price would come down if we bought into it. But I can remember specifically what it was. You see, if I want to watch any of these TVs, or you want to see a program on any of these sets, you look like this if you're watching a black and white TV, this if it's in colour, this if it's flat screen high definition. But if you want to watch it in 3D, you have to look like this. And I would lose these. I wouldn't have the discipline to put them back in the place that I got them. And 3D TV didn't work. It broke the contract. Our TVs got easier for us to use. It catered to our laziness. And until 3D TV can master the glassless screen, it's probably not going to happen. Any product or service that requires us to expend additional effort is going to be a barrier from us buying. Now, you might say, well, actually, my product or service is fully accessible, very easy for anyone to get. But is it? If you're launching a new product or a new service, the first thing your customers have to do is work out what it is. They have to understand what the offer is. That takes a bit of brain power. Then they have to run through their assessment. Is this going to save me cost, time, money, and effort? Is it superior than what's already out there, the benefit? Do I like the style of this new product or service? And then there's the practical stuff. How do I make payment? Do I have to give an email? Do I have to set up a password? Do I have to speak to a stranger? And all the time, that easy button is there, so tantalizingly close that we can just press it and stick with what we've already got. I'm going to ask you a question. So you've come here today to a business presentation. It means that you are in the top 1, 2, 3% when it comes to innovative thought. When was the last time you bought a new product or service? Now, I'm not asking when was the last time you bought a new pair of shoes or a new phone or a new sandwich. When was the last time you bought something completely new? And after a while, when I ask audiences this question, after a few sort of blank stares, someone maybe says something like Alexa. And I explain how many millions of pounds were spent to encourage us to buy that. And someone might mention a product connected to coronavirus they recently bought, perhaps a face mask, a new product. It took a global pandemic for us to buy into new products and services. Probably the most recent thing I bought was a Zoom subscription, so I could do online presentation. It took a global pandemic to force me out of my laziness and make me buy a new product or service. Your challenge is not just to solve a problem, not just to find a solution that's less costly, more beneficial, more stylish, not to even tell people that it exists. You need to encourage them, because they're going to stick with what they've already got, because it's the path of least effort. The brands that conquered the world were not the best, but very often they were the ones that could encourage people to take their products and services. So what of our final point of our triangle? This is a baddie. This is an awful one. This is the reason that probably most products and services fail. Customers don't buy into them. And the terrible word is biased. I said a moment ago that we may not pick a new product or service because it's easy for us to stick with what we've already got. But even if it's not that easy for us to use our current products or services, our biases will draw us to them. There is a bias that's universal in human beings. And I think most people have this. I've never met anyone who hasn't got this bias. It's this. Familiar things are great. And that is a common bias that we all have. Familiar things are great. You can see it if you walk into a room and there are strangers and people you know. If a menu has food items that you like and some food items you've never heard of. This bias is the reason that we will not gravitate to new things, because we understand familiar things as being better. And there's a reason for this. This is us. So here we are, early tribespeople, and this rather nice painting shows some of the first products that we were producing. And our ancestors are in that picture, and we are sleeping in there, because we're lazy. And we're also biased. You see, the tribe discover a new source of food, and they all agree that night they're going to have a big fire, and they're going to roast up this new food, and they're all going to eat it. Our ancestors said, no, stick with the food we know, thanks. And it kept us alive. The forest, a new pathway is found. And our tribal elders come to us and say, look, there's a new path, let's go explore. No, we'll stick to the paths we know. The group that went off are never seen again. We're kept alive because of our bias. A new tribe move into the valley below. And our tribe decide to go and make friends with them. Let's go and see them, meet some new people. No, I'll stick with the people I know. The group never returned. Our bias is a survival technique that keeps us away from risk. It keeps us safe. And that bias still exists in us. Now, whether your science or religion teach you that we are 5,000 or 5 million years old, the bias remains. I'm going to launch a new milk product onto the market. And using my model, I'm going to make sure that it is less costly than the milk that's already available, more beneficial, much more healthy, and it's going to be really stylish. I'm going to bring this product to market, and what happens?
No one buys it.
No one buys it because of our bias. You see, this milk product is milk from a pig. Pig's milk. Now, even if you don't have a religious or cultural objection to taking a product from a pig, you're going to find that a very, very weird thing to do. But why? Well, after we left our caves, we set up small farming towns and villages. And we had a choice of animals to milk. And we could go and grab a pig, and we could struggle it onto a bucket and balance it and try and milk its 12 tiny little taps before it ran off and knocked the bucket over. A lot of work. And we're lazy. And we found this animal, the cow, which has a nice bucket-sized base to it where you can just sit the bucket under, sit very comfortably, 4 great big taps, lovely. So we started milking cows because it was easy. And here we are, generation after generation later, not thinking that drinking pig's milk would be a bit odd, but thinking it would be totally bizarre. It's completely out of our frame of reference. Our bias tells us that absolutely. So what of the Industrial Revolution? Well, at this point, some say our greatest invention was the railways. But the bias came again. It was said if you travel at faster than 30 miles an hour on a rail carriage, the movement of the carriage will give you brain damage, and people avoided them. When the first escalators were installed in Harrods in London, smelling salts and brandy had to be given to the people who had fainted as they went halfway up. Now, yeah, we can laugh at this. People being scared of just automated transport? How silly. Thank goodness we don't have this kind of bias in our enlightened age. Within your lifetimes, you're going to have an opportunity to take the latest form of automated transport, the driverless car. You can be driven around London rush hour traffic, guided by nothing more than a satellite and some clever software. Who fancies going first? And there it is, the bias. It's not in our frame of reference yet. We'll stick with a car with a driver, thank you. So what does this mean for our daily lives? That bias, familiar things are great. I want you to imagine your shopping trolley. Do you, when you go around the shop, fill it with the items that are least costly, most beneficial, and most stylish? No, of course you don't. You do what I do. You fill it up with the same old every single week. In fact, the products on the shelves opposite are invisible to you. And the only time you change to another brand is when the brand you wanted wasn't available. In fact, I can probably guess that you go to the same supermarket pretty much. You favour one. Why do you favour it? It's the most convenient to get to. And if you drive, when you get to the car park, you have your own spot you like to park just there. That's just a spot. And this is the bias. What would it take for a new product to sit on the shelf opposite a product that you love, that you're familiar with, and for them to draw your custom? Your bias ensures that that rarely ever happens. Your challenge is not just to inform your customers that you exist, your product or service is there, or to encourage them to use it. You have to educate them. You have to make the case as to why your product deserves their custom. The brands that made it massive were not the best. But they're very often the best at communicating their value by educating the audience. And so we return to our model. We ask what our problems or frustrations our customers face. We create a solution that can either be said to be less costly, cost-saving, of greater benefit, of greater style. But we know that our customers are ignorant, lazy, and biased. They've never heard of us, to use us requires effort, and they like what they've already got. So we must have a to-do list. 3 things. We must inform, encourage, and educate. The success of products and services lies here, not here. If you can inform, encourage, and educate your customers and make the argument as to why they should switch to your product or service. If you do that, you're likely to have a success. But I told you at the beginning, there was one word, just a single word, a reason that we buy 99.9% of everything. Well, these two triangles. I explained to you that style was the most important factor. And when I asked you in the audience, why did you choose A over B, most of you went for some sort of style. I then explained how bias was the most important factor that stopped us buying new products and services. And both of these have something in common. There's a shared factor that's in both of these two that we value as human beings pretty much more than anything. It's the reason that you keep filling your shopping trolley up with the same old, same old. It's the reason you keep going back to that person who provides those services to you, and they're not the best, but hey. It's the reason that you made the most important choice of your life partner. You made all of these choices based on one factor. You trust them. The most important factor that you will ever develop with your customers is trust. It is possible to sell something to them without trust, just about, maybe. But without it, you won't grow a successful brand. This is at the core of the customer relationship. If they trust us, they're likely to buy from us. And if they trust us a lot, they're likely to keep coming back and even forgive us some of our failures. Our journey is complete by asking, what are my customers' problems and frustrations? A solution that is less costly or more beneficial or delivered in greater style. And aware that we must actively inform, encourage, and educate. And the final thing is trust. If you develop that, you have a brand that you can take into the marketplace and is very likely to be popular. Every popular brand and service that conquered the world that you can currently think of did this.